And welcome to the next edition of Watching the Standard Meta. Today, we are going to, of course, discuss three decks. It was pretty hard to find anything that was sweet in Standard at the recording of this video. I mean, tomorrow is when all of the brand new set from Tarkir starts dropping. I should see some 5.0 lists for next week. For spicy decks, there's probably going to be a very high amount of spicy decks for Standard and Pioneer. Hopefully, if people actually try to brew. But today, of course, we're going to discuss the meta shifts and get into the three decks that I have for you guys today. So if you like this kind of content, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, hit that bell notification for future videos. We're on our way to 1,000 subs over here on the ECG channel, where it's more about competitive talk. But let's get into it. So right out of the gate, we see Esper Pixie, Dimir Bounce, just taking up so much of the meta right out of the gate, and aggro filling up the remainder half. So, like, this is a very, very strict, boring meta. It's just bounce against aggro. People like to make the comment saying that Standard is more healthy, but this meta is just worse, in my opinion. We do have Dimir mid-range, which is basically the Kaido mid-range pile. That's basically Nijitsu. Overlords, about staying this consistent with previous weeks. Golgari mid-range getting a slight uptick. But this deck is also getting suppressed by the Pixie and the Dimir Bounce, even though it's really good into the red deck wins and grow aggro. And then every other deck is just kind of falling out of here. This is going to keep getting closer and more tight on these upper half. And then you're going to have just basically nothing down here. So like overall, this format is shifting. I hope the next set shakes this up because this insane amount of bounce and aggro is just so unpleasant of an actual meta. I could take the mid-range and the Overlord right here. These are fine decks to face. They're not overly oppressive and they're not annoying. they do have a decent amount of removal, or they have a pretty solid draw engine incorporated into these decks. But that's fine for the late game and bridging out turns 6 and 7. But these decks, on the other hand, they're just kind of there. And the fact that it was kind of weird that they did their BNR and they said that Standard is healthy. Like, I don't know what world this is a healthy meta, but I totally respect the fact that they want to stick with, the once a year with emergency bans. And the only way the emergency ban would occur is if people stop playing the format. So keep that in mind. Like, it's pretty obvious they won't ban anything unless people stop playing Arena and people stop playing competitive Standard. But overall, the meta is kind of stagnating a little bit. Even though it looks like there's a huge jump percentages on a few of these decks. I mean, they've kind of been in the upper part for so long. It's just kind of weird to even think that they can even gain more percentages. So clearly, they must be taking percentages away from these decks down here, and they're migrating up here. So that I think Standard just went out of the season. It's kind of weird that the shift is occurring now and not during the Standard RCQ season. But overall, this meta is definitely something else. Let's get into the three decks I have to talk about. So, Spice level number 1, we have this Vine Lasher Land Golgari deck that's playing some Lookouts, some Liliana, some Duresses, some Cut Downs for to Sprock our Crimes. We have a Shieldred, we have Scavenging Ooze, which Sprock's Crimes. We have Gisa, some Alcazods, and some Frillbacks. All pretty solid cards. We have some more target removal for the pesky mice. We have some Dream, Steel, and Oil for a little bit of creature removal with this card. A couple bats and a couple Dread Knights. Me personally, I would not even be playing the bat. I would just be playing more Dread Knights. But that's just because I love Dread Knights. Sideboard, we have some Duresses in case we face control or combo. Ghost Vacuum for Graveyard Hate. Anoint and Cut Down for aggro hate with choking as well. We have Glisa also in here to help against aggro and enchantment hate. Terra Sunder, nice little exile base removal against Dimir Bounce and Esper Pixie. We got Baloth, throwback for kind of a Swiss Army knife, artifact hate, enchantment hate, life gain against aggro, graveyard hate. Fade from History as a way to destroy artifacts and enchantment. And they get 2/2s instead. It's pretty spicy little additive. Then we have another Liliana for control and mid-range and grindy matchups. So that is Golgari Landfall / Crimefall. That sounds like the correct name. Golgari Crimefall. So let's get into the next deck. So next is this deck somehow just came out of nowhere and put up 2 results in the same challenge from 2 different people. They're playing Phyrexian Vindicator, which is the reason why I was interested in this list. Of course, it's playing stock up, which seems to be a norm. Some flash freezes in the main. Bruh, that's something. We have changed the equation for a little bit more red hate. So they really are anticipating the red decks. Authority of the Consuls for a little bit more against hate against red. Going with Beza and Split Up. So this deck is hyper focused on a mid-range strategy to combat red. We have Maze Mind Tome, so we're not just strictly bad into the other matchups. Against Pixies, we got Baloth, Rip, Tide, Gearhulk, and I think interesting sideboard card. We have some Overlord of the Mistmores. So if our flash freezes and change the equations are bad, we could bring in, Stonebrain, Negates, Overlords, Tidebinders, or a Whale. So like all these cards are interesting. They have different matchups where they're really decent. Of course, like I said, being this heavy on anti-red is definitely interesting. But against mid-range and control, like you wouldn't want Authority of the Consuls, you wouldn't want Equation or Flash Freeze. You might keep the change the equation in against Bounce, because a lot of their spells are 1 or 2 drops, as in what you would actually pick up. So that is okay in that matchup, but definitely you would not keep these. But that is Bant, technically Bant, but it's not really Bant because you have no green sources. So it's Esper. It's Azorius, but we have Baloth just for that one little matchup. Seems a little funky. You think you would have some sort of green mana in here in just case you want to hardcast this, but whatever. We have one more deck to talk about. Last is this Grixis pile. It's built around Fear of Infinity. Basically, every time an enchantment comes down, you can pick this from your graveyard to your hand. And ETBs, I think you loot. Maybe I'm wrong. No ETB here. FOMO has the discard rummage effect. We have Makos to help get really big. We have a bunch of ways to draw cards or potentially discard cards. We have this down big enough to pick up our Artist Town if we want. Pick up Talent. Pick up Bitter Reunion. Profit. Furnace. We have ways to just reset all these. Keep it going. This deck is playing a 1-up Teferi before it rotates. That's a little interesting. Sideboard, though, we have another Teferi against mid-range and control. Grinding matchups. Brotherhood in for aggro. Change the equation for aggro. Ruins is a nice way against Overlords and stuff like that, where they kind of have one big body. You take it, hit them with it. Stroke can counter big stuff like the Overlords. Spell Pierce to help against control, also in other similar matchups like that. Barrage can get rid of, Oculus for the most part, and a few other cards that are relevant in blue or white that are also Planeswalkers. And then we have a couple into the Flood Maws. Can get rid of any creature you want. Also, you could bounce their non-land permanents and just give them, I think it's a fish. So it's not that big of a deal to give them a fish. Overall, this deck is kind of spicy. That's kind of why I wanted to talk about it. But that's all the decks I have to talk about for today. Like I said, next week is probably going to be where everything gets spiced up and changes up. And there's hopefully some decent amount of lists. It's probably going to be more standard lists next week than to talk about than for Pioneer, because more people are probably more likely to brew in standard and play the challenges and in the leagues. So until next time, hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day. Talk to you guys next time.